Our special guest on this edition of Actually Music for the Fingerboard is violinist Josef Gingold. Tell you a few things about him. He was the concertmaster of the Cleveland Orchestra under George Szell for 14 years. He played in the NBC Orchestra under Toscanini. He was the concertmaster of the Detroit Symphony under Carl Kruger. And for the past 18 years, he has been and is an honored and delighted faculty member of Indiana University. Welcome to Music for the Fingerboard.
Thank you, James. It's a great pleasure, I assure you, to be here with you this evening, because I listen to your program every Tuesday night, and you are a delight.
Well, thank you. How embarrassing.
Not at all. You give me lots of pleasure, and I hope that those listening tonight to Music for the Fingerboard will enjoy it also.
I know we will. Now, you have a large number of records with you, and, you know, when I do music for the keyboard, I look back on the early days of piano recording, but from a great distance. However, for you, this has actually been a part of your life. For example, you studied with Eugenie Zai, and we have him on recording, one of the earliest people to record. Who are we going to start with?
Well, if I may speak a little bit about our first grand master of the violin that we are going to hear on records this evening. We are going to play a recording of a Hungarian dance by Joachim. Actually, I should have said the Hungarian dance is by Brahms, transcribed by Joachim, and played by him. Now, this recording dates from the year 1904. And at that time, this, of course, was in the primitive early days of recordings. And we must also take into consideration two things. It was the early days of the recording when it was far from what it is today. We did not have 8 channels. We did not have tapes. We did not have any splicings. It was, by comparison, a very crude way of recording. Nevertheless, I am most grateful, as are thousands and thousands of music lovers, particularly violinists, that we have the opportunity to hear, even if it is only a faint idea of what the artist could play. Now, Joachim at that time, when he recorded, was already an old man. If I may say a little bit about Joachim, I would love to speak about him. You know, he was a remarkable wonder child who started studying at the age of 5 or 6. By the way, he was born in 1831. And he studied in his native town of Kitesh in Hungary. And then his parents had him taken to the capital, that is in Budapest, where he played for the concertmaster of the Budapest Opera House. Szervázsényi was his name, who apparently was a very fine violinist and taught this little boy. The child made good progress, and after playing the violin for 2 years, he must have played remarkably well. The great violinist Ernst came to play a concert in Budapest, and Joachim's parents wanted to hear what a celebrity of Ernst's stature would think of this child. Well, he played for Ernst, and Ernst was just greatly taken by the enormous talent of this child, but he told the parents that his left hand was well developed, but that his bow-arm was very stiff, and it was not going to lead anywhere if he continued studying with this present teacher. As we in the profession say, the left hand is the artisan. The right hand, the bow hand, is the artist. The parents then took him to Joseph Böhm in Vienna. Böhm was the second violinist of the Schubert quartet, who had who he was the first actually to play the great Beethoven quartets under Beethoven's direction and coaching, and he also was a great friend of Schubert. He was a highly cultured musician and a marvelous violinist. He took Joseph Joachim into his home, and Joachim lived with him for 2 or 3 years and made phenomenal strides, which laid the foundation for his future career. He then attracted the attention of Mendelssohn. And Mendelssohn was also much taken with this enormous talent, and undertook to guide his career and, above all, his education. He was still a child. He was maybe 12 years old at the time. And he enrolled, that is Joachim, enrolled as a student at the Leipzig Conservatorium, where he studied theory, counterpoint, fugue with Moritz Hauptmann, and he continued the studies of the violin under Ferdinand David. And can you imagine a 12-year-old boy sat as associate concertmaster with David at the Gewandhaus? And Mendelssohn insisted that he gain some orchestral experience. In other words, he was a wonderfully educated, all-around musician. And in 1844, Mendelssohn took him with him to London just for the joy of having him as a companion, as a traveling companion. While he was there, some people who were patrons of the London Philharmonic had heard him play and begged Mendelssohn to let him appear in public. And this 13-year-old boy played the Beethoven Violin Concerto with Mendelssohn conducting, and he played his own cadenzas. And of course, his career was a brilliant one. After that, I'll make it as short as I can, please. And I just wish to say that he had a brilliant career as a soloist. His greatest contribution, perhaps, was the founding of the Joachim Quartet, which set a new standard in chamber music playing. And he became, after a while, director of the Berlin Hochschule für Musik. And he was a very good composer as well. He wrote a magnificent violin concerto called the Concerto in Hungarian Style.
We never hear that anymore, I don't think.
No, we don't. It's very difficult. It's too long, and I still love the piece. And I don't think I'm going to go into his friendship with Brahms, because this is historical and this is hardly the place for it. So why don't we just play Joachim's recording, and then we'll go on to others.
All right, we're going to hear, what are we going to hear? Brahms' Hungarian Dance number 2.
Yes, please.
Very interesting playing. I have a question, though. Is it my imagination, or do I not hear any or just a little bit of vibrato?
Well, you're right. In those days, the vibrato was used sparingly to begin with. Secondly, I should mention also that towards the end of Joachim's life, his hands were practically crippled by arthritis.
He was 73, we figured.
He was
when he made
73,
this.
yes. And I've seen a photograph, and I don't know how he could have played at all. Yet he was persistent. He kept on playing, and I think even the year that he died, 1907, he still gave a series of quartet concerts in Berlin, and kept on playing the fiddle, the violin. It's a love with us, and it's a disease. We just cannot live without it. We are addicted to it, and if I had my life to live over again, I wouldn't want to do anything else but play the fiddle.
Well, you're still in the thick of this one.
Well, I don't know, but regardless of that. Now, if you would like to go on with the program, at this point, I look at the list of the artists that we are going to have this evening. Legendary artists, really. And I'm reminded of something I read recently. There was a collection of random sayings by the great pianist Anton Rubinstein. For the young students at school, may I just make a point of it that it's not Arthur Rubinstein, it's Anton Rubinstein, who was born in, I think, 1830 and died in 1894, a famous and great a pianistic giant, a rival of Liszt, and a man who had composed 120 works in every form, and whose greatest contribution was the founding of the St. Petersburg Conservatory, now Leningrad, of course. Now, in this book, someone asked him a question. He said, "Maestro, isn't it true that so many prodigies, wonder children, when they grow into maturity, don't amount to anything?" And he said, "Yes, it is true. However, do you know of any virtuoso appearing before the public who was not a prodigy?" This is something to do with our program tonight. We have, Joachim, I have already spoken about the precociousness of this remarkable boy who became a great artist and whose contribution to violin playing was invaluable. We are going to hear later on Sarasate, Leopold Auer, Misha Ellman, Fritz Kreisler, Huberman, Isai, who was the only one who was not a prodigy of all these that I've mentioned, and last but not least, perhaps the greatest prodigy of them all, Jascha Heifetz. So, but to come back now to our next recording, we have a recording made by Ferenc Vecsey. That is spelled Vecsey, born in Budapest in 1893 and died in 1935, very young. Ferenc Vecsey, who began to study with his father And after studying, I don't know, maybe he was 6 years old, after studying with his father, who, though he was an amateur, still played well, made such phenomenal progress after 1 year that the father took him to Hubai in Budapest. And he studied for 2 years with Hubai, and this great Hungarian pedagogue said after 2 years, he says, I don't know what else I can teach this boy. And he sent him to Joachim, who, when Joachim heard him play, he said, I think this is the greatest wonder, not wonder child, that I have ever come across. Now, mind you, Joachim in 1904 was 72 years old. This was in 1903. Well, we are going to play for you here an extraordinary recording of the Carmen Fantasy by Hubai, who was this boy's teacher. Now, this was recorded when Vecsey was 11 years old. Now, James, please play this record because I find it incredible.
I listened to this earlier, and it's incredible. Can't wait. Let's hear it again.